A young boy had been struggling with constant headaches for years, affecting his daily life and leaving his family searching for solutions. Medical treatments and numerous doctor visits brought little relief, and the family felt increasingly helpless. However, everything changed when their dog did something unexpected, surprising everyone and bringing a long-awaited respite to the boys' struggles. For years, Jada and Marco had struggled with Niall's worsening health. His condition consumed their lives, leaving them desperate for answers. But recently, their focus shifted to something unexpected: T-Bone's unusual behavior. T-Bone had been Niall's loyal friend since they adopted him as a puppy to keep their bedridden son company. At first, the bond between them was unbreakable, but lately, T-Bone had begun keeping his distance, avoiding Niall more and more. Normally, T-Bone stayed by Niall's side, offering comfort. Now, he resisted being in the same room, making Niall feel abandoned. Jada and Marco couldn't understand the sudden shift, but saw how much it hurt their son. Determined to fix things, they locked T-Bone in Niall's room for a few hours each day. Initially, it seemed to work. T-Bone played with Niall again, but the dog remained uneasy, as if he was desperate to escape. Though they tried to ignore it, the family sensed something was wrong. T-Bone's behavior grew more erratic, and it felt like he would do anything to stay away from Niall. T-Bone needed regular walks, and Niall cherished the rare occasions when he felt well enough to join. The dog usually walked calmly beside him, adjusting his pace to match Niall's. But today would be different. On a rare good morning, Niall and Marco took T-Bone to the park. Everything seemed normal, until Marco handed Niall the leash. Within seconds, T-Bone bolted. Caught off guard, Niall lost his grip. Before they could react, T-Bone had vanished, leaving them stunned. Marco tried to chase after him, but was no match for the dog's speed. Defeated, he returned to Niall, who was in tears. He couldn't understand why T-Bone was so desperate to run away. Unsure of what to do next, Marco took Niall home, promising to do everything possible to find T-Bone. But the task seemed overwhelming. At times, he struggled to find T-Bone even inside their house. How could he track him down in a vast city? Marco started by calling local animal shelters, describing T-Bone and leaving his number in case someone spotted him. Then, he printed and distributed missing dog posters covering lampposts, shop windows, and community boards. He spent every spare moment revisiting parks and familiar streets, calling T-Bone's name, hoping the dog would return to a familiar spot. Marco spoke to pedestrians, joggers, and shop owners, asking if they had seen T-Bone. Every negative response disheartened him, but he pressed on. Turning to social media, he posted on lost pet groups, sharing photos and updates. He checked back daily, following every reported sighting, though none led to T-Bone. Weeks passed, and Marco's determination never wavered. He called shelters repeatedly, his voice filled with hope each time he described T-Bone. He scoured old and new locations, clinging to the belief that someone, somewhere, had seen his dog. Meanwhile, Niall felt an unusual surge of energy. For the first time in a long while, he felt more like himself. Curious, he told Marco he wanted to see his doctor, hoping it could shed light on his condition. The doctor was surprised by Niall's sudden improvement. He listened carefully as Niall described his increased energy and checked his vital signs, which were better than usual. Intrigued, the doctor scheduled more frequent checkups, eager to understand what was behind Niall's sudden improvement. Though the latest tests showed no major changes, he advised Marco and Jada to remain cautiously optimistic. Leaving the doctor's office, they felt hopeful but uncertain. They couldn't help but wonder, was this just a coincidence, or was there more to Niall's newfound energy than they realized? Back at home, the atmosphere was cautiously upbeat. Despite the uncertainty, Niall's energy was undeniable. Marco and Jada couldn't help but feel a swell of excitement, wondering if this could be a turning point. The family laughed more during meals, their conversations filled with hopeful speculation. Niall frequently asked Marco for updates about T-Bone. Each time Marco walked through the door, Niall's eyes lit up with expectation. Marco shared every detail, keeping his son's hope alive while continuing his relentless search. Seeing Niall more engaged, the family adjusted their routines to include him more. They took regular walks, played board games, and started a small garden project. These activities brought them closer and gave Niall something to look forward to each day. Niall also spent his afternoons drawing pictures of T-Bone, imagining their lost dog on adventures. His room became filled with these colorful depictions, fueling his motivation to continue searching. Determined to help, Niall insisted on joining Marco. At first hesitant, Marco relented, touched by his son's resolve. Together, they planned visits to local parks and animal shelters, hoping to find T-Bone. They spent the morning asking shelter staff if they had seen a dog matching T-Bone's description. Niall called out his name, hoping for a familiar bark. Though the staff was supportive and promised to alert them if any new dogs matched, the day ended with no sign of T-Bone. As they drove home in silence, disappointment weighed heavily on them. Niall gazed out the window, his initial excitement fading. At home, Niall seemed more exhausted than usual. Marco and Jada grew concerned as he went to bed early, complaining of feeling unwell. Their worry deepened when his condition rapidly worsened. They focused solely on his health, setting aside the search for T-Bone. Night after night, they took turns staying up, monitoring his symptoms. Their once hopeful conversations turned into quiet discussions of what to do next. As the days passed, Niall's condition stabilized with careful management, but the cause remained a mystery. Marco and Jada contemplated seeking further medical opinions, desperate for answers. One sunny morning, Niall looked out the window and gasped, "Dad, it's T-Bone!" Marco followed his gaze and saw their dog near the bushes, cautious but present. Niall's face lit up with hope. Marco rushed outside, his heart racing. T-Bone, however, darted away, reluctant to be caught. Marco chased him through the yard, weaving around garden tools. The commotion drew the attention of neighbors, who quickly joined in, working together to corner T-Bone. With their help, Marco finally caught him. Niall watched from the window, his face breaking into a wide, relieved smile. Tears welled in his eyes as Marco held T-Bone gently by the collar. The neighbors cheered, sharing in the joy of the reunion. Thanking the neighbors for their help, Marco wasted no time and took T-Bone to the vet. As he waited anxiously, the vet conducted a thorough examination. Finally, the vet gave Marco the news he had been hoping for. T-Bone was in excellent condition, surprisingly well for a dog that had been missing for so long. With T-Bone safely home and Niall on the path to recovery, the family felt whole again. The family felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Knowing T-Bone was healthy lifted their spirits, and Niall's face lit up when Marco shared the good news. With T-Bone back, Niall's energy surged. His laughter filled the house again, and he seemed more like his old self. Marco and Jada were hopeful that having his best friend by his side would help him fully recover. The family settled into a new rhythm, balancing T-Bone's presence with Niall's health needs. They established routines to keep both comfortable, creating a structured yet loving environment. However, T-Bone's restless behavior soon disrupted their newfound peace. He frequently tried to escape, dashing for open doors and leaping at the fence. The family grew anxious, worried about keeping him contained. As T-Bone's escape attempts increased, so did Niall's symptoms. His energy faded, and he showed signs of illness once again. Marco and Jada watched in growing distress, realizing the situation was becoming unmanageable. Marco and Jada had hoped T-Bone's return would bring stability, but instead, it introduced new challenges. With each passing day, the family struggled under the weight of uncertainty. Determined to find answers, Marco proposed a difficult solution, temporarily separating T-Bone from Niall. If they could observe changes in Niall's condition without the dog around, they might gain insight into his health struggles. Marco set up a comfortable space for T-Bone in the garage, ensuring he had his favorite toys and bedding. Though it pained him, he enforced the separation, determined to see if it would help Niall. The decision created tension in the household. Niall was devastated, missing his companion deeply. His usual laughter turned to silence as he stared at the garage door, hoping for a glimpse of T-Bone. Jada was uneasy about the separation, fearing its emotional impact on Niall. Though she disagreed with Marco, she trusted his instincts and agreed to give it time. Days passed, and the family observed Niall closely. Marco and Jada tracked his symptoms and moods, hoping for a sign that they were on the right path. To their surprise, Niall's health gradually improved. His energy returned, and his symptoms eased. The change was undeniable, leaving Marco and Jada both relieved and confused. Encouraged by Niall's progress, Marco reached out to their family doctor. He explained the situation and the unexpected improvement after T-Bone's separation. The doctor was intrigued and scheduled an immediate home visit. He conducted thorough tests, checking Niall's respiratory functions and collecting samples. He also asked detailed questions about recent changes in the household. The results came back quickly, confirming Marco's growing suspicion. While the findings were complex, the doctor identified an environmental factor significantly affecting Niall's health. Then, the shocking truth was revealed. Niall had a severe, rare allergy to dogs. The realization explained everything: his recurring health struggles, the sudden downturn after T-Bone's return, and why his symptoms improved when they were separated. The family processed the heartbreaking news with mixed emotions. They were relieved to finally understand Niall's condition, but devastated by what it meant for their future. Marco and Jada faced an impossible decision, one that would affect them all profoundly. Would they find a way to keep T-Bone safely in their lives? Or would they have to say goodbye to the pet they had fought so hard to bring home? The answer weighed heavily on them as they prepared for the difficult road ahead. The family was stunned by the diagnosis, but it gave them a clear answer on how to improve Niall's health and quality of life going forward. The realization explained why T-Bone instinctively distanced himself from Niall. Perhaps T-Bone sensed that his presence was making Niall ill. This instinctive behavior might have been T-Bone's way of trying to protect Niall, despite their strong bond. It was a bittersweet understanding for the family, as it highlighted the dog's sensitivity and intelligence. The family made the difficult decision to rehome T-Bone to ensure Niall's health. This was not easy. They spent days discussing and reaching out to friends and family, looking for the right home. Everyone was heartbroken, but they knew it was the best choice for Niall's well-being. T-Bone was given to a loving family, well-suited to care for him. They had a spacious yard and another dog for companionship. Marco and Jada made sure to visit the new home, seeing firsthand that T-Bone would be happy and well cared for. It was comforting yet emotional to leave T-Bone in his new environment. Niall recovered fully, understanding the necessity of the painful decision. As his health improved, he began to enjoy activities he hadn't in years. The family worked through their emotions, supporting each other, and Niall often talked about visiting T-Bone. They planned regular updates and visits to ensure T-Bone was still a part of their lives, albeit differently.